Welcome to DIF 2018, the online festival talking about ideas and innovation that are ready to change the world. Last year, we started the conversation around glue like a screw. And this year, today, we're going to continue that conversation. In 30 minutes, we're going to cover a wide variety of topics, from material science and reversible connections to how to make this viable in business. Remember, this is the DIF and we want your participation. There is a comment box next to this session page where you can post all your comments, your questions, your thoughts. And also, you can use social media using the hashtag ThinkDiff. I'm very happy to welcome our three guests today. We have Lucas, Erik, and Ben. Ben is Director of Design and Innovation at iLevel in Portland, Oregon, in the USA. It's a company focused on brand design. We have Lucas Hoeks from DSM Niaga from the Netherlands joining us. He's Manager Strategic Growth at DSM Niaga. And we have Erik Lochtens, Director of Circular Economy and CEO of Europe for ECOR. Lucas, can I give the stage to you?
Yes, thanks a lot, King, and thanks everyone for joining again this session. Last year we had a great discussion about complexity of materials and products and how we have built a society with a lot of different very cool products, but that the complexity of all those materials have created also a bit of a waste challenge. And Mark Miodownik joined us and shared his story there. And Niaga and ECOR brainstormed in this session about how we can potentially combine two technologies. The technology that Niaga brings to the table is really design philosophy. So what we do at Niaga, what I do with my colleagues, is we redesign everyday stuff. We take everyday products like mattresses, like panels, like carpets, and take them from scratch and redesign them in a way that they can be recycled easily after use. And what we apply as a philosophy is really to reduce the complexity of materials to the bare minimum, one, maybe two. We only use materials that are that we know that they are safe, that we know that it can be recycled, and we also only use connections that are reversible. And it is the reversible connections that I think when we met ECOR made an interesting match and made a kind of the idea of glue like a screw, because Erik of ECOR was working on panels, and to be honest, I have never thought about panels that much before I met Erik, but panels are everywhere. It's the MDF, it's the particle board, it's the doors, it's everywhere around us. And these materials or these products are usually made out of a man-made and a nature-made ingredient. And they're mixed together so it can perform for us, but then we can never separate them anymore. And ECOR had a great innovation of pressing, making panels, so there was no man-made, no glue, nothing necessary anymore, and it was only nature-made materials, and then also made from waste. So that sounded pretty cool. But then to finish those products with an extra layer, one usually needs an adhesive. And that is where we came in, because Niaga developed an adhesive that can be unclicked on demand. So it works a little bit like a screw, but then it is an adhesive, it is a glue. And the Niaga technology with this glue and the ECOR technology with making panels, we discovered last year could be a great potential to make high-performance panels for everywhere around us in a way that it can be brought back to us, can be recycled back to a new panel. And that was the dream. That was really what we wanted to reach. And we've spent, as two companies, I think, over a year of experimenting, of throwing coffee cups over tables, of jumping on panels, of really trying to pressure test what a panel can do, and then after all those testings, try and recycle it and bring it back to a new panel, and then again jump on a table and throw wine over it. And that is, I think Erik is the CEO of ECOR Europe, and he's not only the CEO, he's also usually found in the lab and has been very well involved in this whole project. And he will be able to share a little bit with us today on where we stand today with this innovation and if we've been able to bring this dream to reality. Eric.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. And yeah, so I would like to start off with the audience to ask you, imagine, yeah, on what we're talking about from an impact perspective. So basically, every desk you ever sat on, every kitchen door you ever opened, every reception you walked towards to, it's all made from MDF and particle board, and its materials glued together, and they're up for incineration or landfill by the end of their first life cycle. So we're talking tremendous amounts of material waste and beautiful resources being discarded all the time. And I'm not the real technical guy, but what gets me out of bed every morning is to make sure that we've got more healthier materials and better in that. And after last year's DIF, we signed a research and development agreement with DSM, and that was just before Christmas. And in early January, we set out the milestones with what we wanted to achieve on the combination of our technologies by November of this year. And even already before the summer, we had validated that it is possible to really disrupt that existing materials and have healthier materials. So I'm going to try now via the camera to show you what we're doing. So basically ECOR, I don't have to explain it anymore, everyone knows that. It's a technology where we can take waste. So in this case, I've got beverage cartons, and I've got rapeseed straw, and that is pressed with only water, pressure and heat after we pulped it in our material. And we make a panel out of that. So this is an ECOR panel. Water, pressure, heat, no additives, no resins. And I always have to show this stuff because people then can see that it is real, it is there, it is for today. But when you glue something to these cellulose fibers, which you can keep in endless cycles, then and you can't detach it anymore, then these cellulose fibers are gone as well. So the circularity factor is gone, and the saving of resources as well. So what we first did is we could laminate Niaga adhesive onto this panel. And the Niaga adhesive comes in as a beautiful polyester kind of thing, and that we glue to this one. And then you can laminate. And now suddenly I've got something which you can relate to. This is a product which we now made with Niaga adhesive, ECOR panels, and in this case a paper honeycomb to save weight. But we also can make all these different layers ECOR together with Niaga, and then you get a rock solid panel. This is really testing, and this is working in the market. But now we've got these, and then we had to validate and we had to prove that we can also separate it again. So what we could do is within seconds, we could decouple the Niaga adhesive from the ECOR fibers. And then we repulped the ECOR from that. I'm throwing it on my laptop again. And then we could make and validate a new ECOR panel out of this and save all these kind of materials. So all these desks, all these furniture pieces, all these kitchen doors, everything we could now replace by healthy materials and decouple them again and keep them in endless user cycles. And I'm so thrilled about us having achieved that in such a short period of time. And we saw also for the first application, and that's for the developed scalable technology, and that is furniture panels. But you can imagine that in a lot of other spaces in the vertical there are applications. So ECOR panels can be made from biomass waste streams, agricultural residue material. It can be made from process waste streams, so cellulose fibers which come out of a manufacturing process, and it can be urban. It can be your jeans, it can be your shirt, it can be the old newspaper, corrugated cardboard. And with the Niaga reversible adhesive, we can make beautiful everyday use structures from the full core I was talking about to lightweight. The possibilities are tremendously. And because we can uncollect them in seconds, we can put them back in the grinder, we can make a new material out of it, and therefore we can eliminate the need for new raw material resources to be over and over again and provide a healthier, abundant, beautiful alternative.
Hey, Erik, we have a question already coming in on Twitter from Lisa, and she wonders how many life cycles are we talking about on your product compared to general particle board? Is there a limit to that or not?
Yes, we will find limits, and it is depending on the waste stream, but on the shortening of the fibers, but we don't shorten the fibers more during the process as what is done with corrugated cardboard anymore. So we've had materials which we reuse for 20 times, 30 times, where traditional standard industry was about 7 times, and then you're to the weakest material of corrugated cardboard. But we have to find it out. We have to figure it out. We're not claiming to know everything already. Yeah? Hey, but I would like to introduce Ben, because what you need is also great people who then pick this up, are early adopters, visionary, applicators into the market. And I met Ben in eye level, and we did a session in Prague, extremely cold, but extremely energizing as well. So I would like to hand over to Ben now. Ben.
Thanks, Erik and Lucas. So I thought I'd just do a brief introduction about who iLevel is to give some context and how I kind of came into this world. Personally, my background is in design and fabrication. So I'm kind of a maker at heart and have been building things for a long time. And my career has developed into more of the design and supply chain management and brand design world. iLevel is a full-service brand experience agency. So what I mean by full service is we do everything from design and development, sourcing and manufacturing, and implementation and maintenance of brand experiences. And what brand experience means in our world is really includes permanent retail environments. So your flagship stores, your shop and shops in a wholesale environment, but also temporary or semi-permanent initiatives. So things like point of sale displays or product launch displays. Historically, the majority of our work and our clients are really global retail brands in the sportswear and fashion industry. We've recently expanded into other verticals such as health and beauty, hospitality, actually workplace design as well, consumer electronics, automotive, etc. We're a global organization, over 600 team members worldwide at 14 offices, operating in Europe, EMEA region, Asia Pacific region, and Americas. So I'm here based in Portland, Oregon, our US headquarters. And then kind of bigger picture, we're also part of a organization called Inner Workings, who focus on marketing execution kind of beyond the three-dimensional built environment to include two-dimensional marketing materials, so print and POP displays, things like that. So just a bit more context about how our company vision and my role has kind of brought me this conversation today. I thought I'd just read our iLevel's 2025 vision statement, which is to be the first choice partner in innovation and sustainability for leading brands who aspire to reinvent the customer experience. So there's some keywords in there that are really crucial to my role. So I'm looking to focus on really building partnerships with brands who have the ambition to innovate in a sustainable way, specifically circular retail environments. And then the second part of that is strategic supply chain partners like ECOR and Niaga that can really enable circularity in the built environment. So I hope that gives a good overview of kind of my perspective. Any questions on that?
I think there are no questions at the moment. All right, so I I don't know if you're going to this subject now, but Ben, you've mentioned what you do in connection with ECOR and Niaga. Can you go a bit more in detail on how your perspective, your brand perspective on a new product like this, how that works for you?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned our full service approach to retail environments. I think something that's really important about our position in the marketplace is that connection between global brands who have that ambition and also that complex supply chain to create spaces. So what's really, really cool about finding technologies and companies like ECOR and Niaga to enable circularity is that we're able to design products with this technology in mind that can change from a linear path from design to execution and into the store, and then end of life cycle, which is it's a typical kind of built environment. And if you think about retail, the scale is pretty massive as far as the type of the amount of products and materials that actually don't get recycled and upcycled despite our best efforts because of the complexity of the things that we design. So I think that the ability to kind of still design beautiful objects that are complex, but be able to separate them down to their back down to their initial raw materials that can be upcycled is really powerful, because then we can change that cycle from linear to actually designing for a circular supply chain, so that those materials can be unclicked, separated, and taken back into the flow, back to design and implementation again.
And on a very practical scale, how do you do that? What do you put in practice?
So I think we mentioned from a fabrication standpoint, the technologies being able to separate is a big important part of it, but actually the supply chain and reverse logistics is quite complex. So I think that's something that we're in a good position to implement, but it really involves making sure that from the beginning we can track those raw materials and manage the whole process, so that once it goes into the store, then we can kind of bring it into the reverse logistics stream to bring the materials back and replace it with new marketing materials. So in our world, that's constantly changing, and there's always a new product launch or a new seasonal launch, and even the permanent stores are being refreshed every couple of years. So we definitely we're building that process and the systems to collect and track those things.
Yeah, and you mentioned tracking what materials are in the product. That's actually a topic that we discuss a lot at the DIF. We have people that have come up with a little QR code which you can scan on a product, and you can see every material that's in the product. What kind of technologies are you using for that?
So for us, this is certainly new territory, I think, for the world. But there's some really interesting technologies, like even RFID fibers that can be, or chips that can be embedded in raw materials that can be scanned, and once those materials are separated, then you can track the unique code of that material over multiple life cycles. So I won't pretend that we've actually executed this in the real world yet. So the theory is there, the technology is there. I think we're at the point of prototyping and testing that. But maybe one just recent practical example project that we did with using ECOR and Patagonia in Europe was we actually created trade show booths and panels built from panels from ECOR, and at the end of it, that first life cycle, collected the materials back into the manufacturing stage, and are producing now temporary marketing materials from that. So we're sending, those, let's say, materials that will live in for 1 month or so in the store, but together with a self-addressed box to return. the materials, and so that once the campaign is over, you can very easily just drop them in the box and ship them back to eye level, and we can collect those materials and a way of tracking it as well. That's sort of a first proof of concept that we're working on.
May I ask a question? What do you think, Ben, is the impact of the combination of our two technologies to your industry? Do you have any idea on the how much material it is? Can you give the audience an idea on that?
It's a lot of material. I don't have some specific numbers off the top of my head, but if you can imagine in the physical world of a store, anything that's paper or wood-based currently, so you have and stuff you might not even see, the substrate of tables or wall panels, and then if you expand that to, I mentioned our parent company, Interworkings. If you look at our numbers from a supply chain management standpoint of the amount of just paper and wood-based products that we're currently producing, it's over $100 million US per year that we're purchasing, and so a good chunk of that could be easily replaced with ECOR, and even a larger chunk once you introduce Niaga to be able to separate those more complex materials. So I think the impact is pretty huge.
Cool.
And we recognize these numbers, especially the monetary numbers, also from other industries Niaga is active in, for example, mattresses or carpet, where the price that is paid for all the materials and that is lost after its life is in the billions. And it would be so interesting if, together with being able to separate materials and bring them back in their pure form, but also being able to recognize what is actually in a product, if we take the complexity away and bring it back to a simple set, reversible materials, then materials become that currency that it was before it made the product. And then it's a lot more than just a waste issue. Then it really becomes a currency in an economy. But you need, indeed, Kinga, like you say, it is so relevant to be able to communicate what is in the product far beyond the point of sale. So to have that QR code or to have that RFID chip that tells the provenance of the materials that are in, and that tells what materials ECOR took to make because there is already a story to those materials, and maybe also the manual for dismantling, so how to take it apart, so it really becomes something of a local economy rather than of a controlled supply chain by one or two players. And then we are, I think that is maybe the future, but then we are really talking about materials as a currency, which would be, to us, would be a very interesting way of looking at the way we make our day-to-day stuff. Yeah,
but I agree, and I would like to align, because at what the core of the eco technology, and now we can unclick with the Niaga adhesive. Imagine that in essence, what you're doing is you're creating a positive economical value to materials which were perceived to have a negative economical value. You have to pay to get rid of that. And that needs to be calculated into those models for companies like eye level as well. Don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of think about total cost of ownership in our world. That usually means a kind of 1 year span, but it should really be tied to the total cost of ownership of that concept, I think, or that environment. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting aspect of it. And another thing that Lucas touched on is it's the storytelling as well, which I wanted to mention, as far as tracking those materials. And I think the question that came in earlier about what is the limit to the life cycle and amount of times that you can repurpose something. Imagine being able to, once we can track that and have that data, from a brand perspective, we can really start telling an impactful story that when you're in a store looking at a product that was made from recycled plastics, let's say, but the display that it's on as well can tell a story of how it's been, this is its 14th life cycle in the chain of retail brand presentation. So that's another really cool aspect that I'm looking for brands that will would like to explore that as early adopters and do some pilot projects.
Do you think they will see that it is actually enabling their own competitive advantage as well? Do you have any idea?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's more and more these days. I think the customers are actually demanding that from brands, but there's also an opportunity to be a real differentiator for brands that take responsibility beyond just the products that they create, but also the environments in which they display them. So I think it can be a really, really strong competitive advantage.
And what you just talked about when you talked about competitive advantage and also storytelling is the audience, the customers in the end.
Exactly.
Can you tell a bit about what value you're adding for the customers, and dive into that a little bit more?
For me, yeah. So yeah, I think another important part of that is the actually health of the environment as well. So beyond like ideological perspective, even the air that's breathed in the environment is kind of the most, I'd say, personal value add to the people that are experiencing those spaces. Did that answer your question, Kinga?
Yeah, but I was wondering about the bigger picture. Like, what are people looking for? And if you have a material like this, like, how do you communicate with the customers, and what are they looking for?
Yeah, I think they're looking for products that are designed with a more responsible to the environment, and so that more thoughtful products, and really expecting that there's, it's not just sort of business as usual from the linear supply chain of the things that we make, but there's thought that's put into the design of these products to better the environment. So
yeah, and I'd like to add. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to add to that, Kinga, because I think what is extremely important, I think customer awareness increased tremendously. And with these new technologies, they can make the right choice. So they've got an option now. But at the same time, this material blends in, and this combination of technologies with ECOR and Niaga, it blends in such a way that it easily can go from a niche to a commodity. At the end of the day, years from now, for me, that can't be quick enough. At the end of the day, the customer doesn't need to be insecure or worried anymore that it is simply the commodity that we've chosen, new, cool materials, which can work in these cycles and provide a healthy environment. It is going to be the commodity. It's not going to stay in a niche kind of market. But we need
Eric,
to be adapted.
Eric, I think we started with recycling really as our kind of redesign objective, right?
Yeah.
And it was also with other products we've been working on that the recycling, the circular economy was the start. But then when you reduce the complexity of those materials and you take all the different layers out and you replace them with a simple set of known healthy materials, it's not only the recycling, but like you say, and Ben as well, it's also the health impact that is suddenly rising. It was not the intention, but the impact is huge. And very often all kinds of unexpected performance impacts. So I think it brought us also, the circular economy design perspective brought us a lot further than only a product that is recyclable. It is very often a product that there's no need for it to be more expensive and it performs a lot better. And that is usually because of this simplification of materials with high quality materials that can be bought back again and again.
Yeah.
And one question I have there, because we have been talking quite a lot about different kind of materials and how to make them more healthy for people, but where are we today with this talking? Are we actually doing it already as well?
Well, let me give you a good example, because yes, of course, we're doing it. In this combination, we're now on the commercial rollout. That's the phase we're in. There's also our call at the end of this thing. We need launching customers. But the project I'm specifically very passionate about is what we're doing with Niaga and ECOR, is imagine that you put your children in an unhealthy school environment. So we're trying to develop school furniture which has less volatile off-gassing components in it, that we can have that school furniture being easier replaced, because we don't have to spend it. In the Netherlands, on average, a school desk is 20 years in one building. Why can't we celebrate abundancy? Because we can keep these materials in endless flows. So the school furniture project, to have people simply working on getting clean, cool stuff in it. That's what it's about. It's about celebrating that abundancy. And yeah, so I'm really pushing on that project. I love it. Yeah, that's something we do.
That's great to hear. And so this is a good example also of how you come from the science of the material, creating a material and actually putting it into business. Are there any challenges you had along the way? What are the toughest parts of it?
I can answer that from maybe a manufacturing standpoint, because there's a lot of R&D and development that needs to take place. I mean, our industry is really built with the manufacturing of materials like MDF and plywood in mind. So all the machinery and skill sets are designed with that sort of permanent adhesive laminate, and then connecting metal to wood with screws. But this is a bit new. Glue like a screw is a bit different. So I think that is one challenge that we're currently working with suppliers and manufacturers that share that ambition to innovate and figure out ways that we can get it to the point where, as Eric mentions, this becomes a commodity, and it's abundant, it's affordable, and it's there for everyone. And it can also be quickly update those designs, like you mentioned in the school example. If you think about retail brands, there's a definite need, excitement for speed to market and constant evolution of that brand and how it relates to the environment. So we're really focused on that supply chain development right now to make sure that we can get over those hurdles and produce using ECOR and Niaga.
It's about behavioral change. Yeah, people. There's always a slight resistance to change. So to have to deal with the material in a different way than you've always been doing, and that's something where you need to help people with. You need to deliver the proof of concept. You need to deliver the solution, and join each other in that learning curve. This is always multi-stakeholder, always multiple people involved. And that's that behavioral change is something which you need to facilitate and which you need to guide, which you need to provide the guidance for. At the end of the day, what we now achieve with our panels, the furniture panels, they can be treated for the by far most part as what standard industry does. And that is something we also really look for, that it is easy, accessible for the existing fabricators. But still, there's that mental step to take, I think.
And it's also a matter of global and more regional approach, especially if you work with cellulosic waste streams. I think one of the challenges, King, that we are facing in scaling this up is because the industry now is a pretty global one. So you take resources from one place and then you make a product and ship it all over the globe. Where in this technology, we will be looking at local waste streams. And building those ecosystems around the local waste streams, and then the manufacturers and the craftsmen that make beautiful local stuff out of it, and for maybe local use, and then bring it back to the recycling plant that is preferably also local. And that kind of building an ecosystem from a global ecosystem that runs pretty efficiently in a linear way to a more local circular ecosystem is going to be it's going to be a very interesting challenge. And from that perspective, we are not only looking for the ones that are interested in using our products now in this next phase of commercialization, but also organizations, companies that have the waste streams that are locally available to be used in those products, because those are also very needed to build a local ecosystem.
Yeah, well, we can have these hubs for local manufacturing and bring those technologies to the people at where it is needed. Yeah.
That's very interesting. We have a few questions coming in from the audience. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time anymore, so I'm going to pick one of them and then ask a last question after that. The question is, has the project encouraged more collaboration, or does it require the same facilitation process as before? Who wants to answer this question?
I'll just start with, from my perspective, yeah, much more collaboration. I think it's, Eric touched on it. It's really key to being successful is going in with a shared vision, but in kind of an open mind about how we all engage and kind of step out of those traditional roles that we're used to from, you know, sort of client or vendor, is going to a more circular or triangular partnership, like the three of us sitting here, but also with, you know, brands, and then even the end user, the consumer that's, you know, shopping, is to really understand and collaborate at that level. I think it's, yeah, it sparked immense amounts of collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I really liked, King, in the last year, so a year ago, we had this dream. And now I'm sitting here with stuff and it simply works. You can make it and you can go into that market. But what I really loved in that whole process is that we found so many people who share the same ambitions, who've got in their DNA that they want to make that meaningful difference, that they want to bring it to market, that you share that passion, and actually that combined enthusiasm that makes people leaping the extra step and getting it done. So, yeah, I think what we now need is we need launching customers. We're ready. We're going for this. We're not on a mass scale ready, but we need launching customers in order people who want to join us and commit towards going that road together. And then for the global rollout. That's it, I think. What do you think, Lucas?
Yeah, I think for us in this whole last year, it's been, if you redesign something from a blank sheet, it's pretty scary, because you have nothing to work with. You really have to start from scratch, and obviously that there is collaboration needed to make that happen. If it's just an incremental innovation, then it's probably easy to do it by yourself and then protect it. But if it's a disruptive one, if you start from scratch with a blank sheet, there's no way it's going to be successful without that collaboration. So, and we are not done yet. There's a lot more collaboration to come. There's a lot more validation to be done. So I'm happy that it's not done yet, because it's been a cool year.
And what is needed to bring it into a big scale? Is that even more collaboration? Is that a different set of the system?
I think it's a more experimentation that is, of course, collaboration. So I think the applications and the potential for this is a lot bigger than we have been testing right now. So we are looking in office furniture, but we see a lot of other applications. Testing those, bringing it back, recycling it, bringing it back again and again and again. Will be crucial for scaling it up, and then also engaging or working with the ones in that ecosystem and the supply chain for them to also create the ownership over something that is a disruptive change. I think you will have a lot of talks in this month about disruptive change and And this is definitely, we are in the same curve.
Thank you very much for this session. I've enjoyed it a lot. People online, if you have any more questions, unfortunately we've run out of time now, but I can ask Erik, Lucas, and Ben if they might check out the session page now and then to answer some questions. The Disruptive Innovation Festival hasn't ended yet. This is one of the 150 sessions that we have going on. One that I really look forward to is going to launch next week, Thursday. It's our own DIFumentary, a documentary made by the DIF team. It's called System Reset, and it's all about the role of people in our economy and what we can do. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot, Erik, Lucas, and Ben, for joining me today. It was a great session, and see you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks again.